Wade Phillips, so far, has had a coaching career that spanned 50 years from 1969 to 2019. He's a decorated defensive coordinator, and he had multiple stints as a head coach. But now, Wade is a multimedia star. He has one of the best Twitter follows there is, with an amazing handle at Son of Bum. Also in his repertoire is a weekly podcast called Overtime that he co-hosts with his son, Wes Phillips, along with his daughter, Tracy. Wade, Merry Christmas. Welcome to Great Day Nation. And my first question is, did you ever imagine that you were going to be such a media savvy stud during your coaching career?
I don't know that from that, but when I was a coach with the Cowboys, when the head coach with the Cowboys, Twitter kind of came out or was starting to be popular then. And I thought, well, this is a way to kind of connect with the fans,
Yes.
And so I got on that, and the rest is history.
What is it about? Because I'm fairly new to Twitter and Instagram, very much to Instagram. What is it that intrigues you about? Because you and I communicated through Twitter messaging, and what is it on that platform that you like? What don't you like about it? I mean, it seems like you've kind of embraced it.
Yeah, I do it for fun, obviously. Fans and people I know, like you say, you can communicate. Sometimes people get on that I hadn't seen in a while or hadn't talked to, and that, so you have that opportunity. But also, it's fun to kind of converse or give your ideas a little bit every once in a while. And I've had things that I wanted to say about players that have passed away. I mean, those kind of things. You don't normally get to say those things that you feel that are important to only a few people. So I think some of those things are really important. And then just communication and having fun with it, having fun with football overall, because that's what I've done my whole life, like you said.
Oh, yes, you have 50 years of it. And yeah, I think social media, and this is speaking to all our listeners, we have all kinds of ages, different, demographics, but I think what social media needs to be, it's number one, needs to be safe, and it needs to be entertaining and fun. Like you said, it should be a medium that shouldn't be used for trolling and so forth. It should be used constructively and with forethought. I think sometimes, just because we have the medium, some of us just feel like entitled to just throw things out there without any forethought. And I think, to your point, I've read some of your tweets. I think there's a little bit of thinking behind it. It's not like you're just tweeting for the sake of tweeting. I like the fact that you've given it some thought, and that creates ballast. That gives it some weight. Do you agree with that?
I do. Yeah. That's, again, like you say, yeah, there's people out there that are always going to, I guess there's, certain people that want to use it really the wrong way, but there's so many people that use it the right way. I think it's important to have it.
I wonder what your dad, Bum Phillips, would say if he was alive today, Wade, about this.
I don't know if he'd mess with it. I mean, he just, of course, he was famous for a lot of things he said. I always accused him of having a writer, but he didn't. He came up with those things himself.
Oh, I remember some of the sayings, and just to give perspective to everybody who's watching and listening. You and I have some history together, obviously, mostly down in New Orleans, where you joined you took over begrudgingly, maybe, after your dad stepped away from the head coaching job in '85 as an interim. But your dad drafted me in '82 in the 4th round, and I remember being shocked when he did, because you had just a couple of years earlier drafted Russell Erxleben in the 1st round, a kicker punter that was an experiment that didn't quite work out. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think I got a pretty good story there on that whole deal.
I would love to hear the inside.
Yeah, when we got there, Erxleben was there, and he didn't turn out to be. He was more of a punter than he was a field goal kicker.
Yeah.
Well, actually, for your draft, my dad came to me and Harold Richardson, Coach Richardson.
H.
Yeah, he's Coach H. Anyway, he said, I want y'all to get me a kicker in the draft. Look, and we had scouts and so forth in those days, but he wanted us to pick out a kicker. So we looked at the NFL stats first. I mean, this is how we ended up getting you. We looked at the NFL stats, and you had pretty good stats, and so we started looking at film, and we looked at Michigan State film, and you were kicking the ball out of the end zone. Erxleben couldn't kick the ball. In those days, you got the ball on the 20-yard line if they didn't.
That's right.
So it was important that if you had a kicker that could kick it out, you gained a lot of yardage there because teams
field position
to the 30 or 40 against us or against the team, the Saints the year before. So we needed a kicker. So we actually just looked at the stats on you, and actually we were looking at Michigan State, and we saw this wide receiver out there that was a heck of an athlete, and we said, who is this guy that you played with? Obviously,
Kirk Gibson.
Yes, Kirk Gibson. And they said, well, he's a pretty good baseball player, so it won't be worth drafting him because he's going to go to baseball. So so we knew they had one really good athlete on the team.
That was it. That was it, Wade.
Yeah. And anyway, we picked you out. Harold and I picked you out, and then of course my dad, picked the round because, as you know, kickers aren't normally taken real high. Erxleben was an exception, obviously. But anyway, that's the way we ended up taking you. Was really sight unseen. We watched some film, and you kicked the ball out. We didn't know how accurate you'd be or all those other things. We certainly didn't know you'd be a Hall of Famer. We would have picked you in the first round.
Dang it. No, I remember having a really auspicious start, Wade. Preseason, terrible, 3 for 12. And I remember we were in Vero Beach in training camp, and Benny Ricardo was the kicker at the time, but I think he saw the writing on the wall because I remember at practice, it was one of the first two-a-days in Vero Beach, and I had just signed my contract, and he was kicking like a 30-yard field goal, and I decided I was going to go back and start bombing kicks over his head. So I went back to 50, 55 and started launching missiles right over his head, and Benny was like, So fast forward to about 12 hours later, no Benny Ricardo at the dinner, no Benny Ricardo at bed check. Next morning, where's Benny? Benny had left the building. I think he saw what was going on, and he was out of there, man. And that was the end of Benny Ricardo, and that started my deal. And it was bad from the start for me. I mean, I didn't have it, and it was, the strike year in '82 and so forth. And anyway, I'm sure glad that it worked out. And I want to credit it, and I want to say this to you, Wade, because I don't know if you know this, but I had a conversation with your dad. Because of my preseason wasn't very good, and then I got hurt on the opening kickoff. I don't know if you remember that. I got hurt.
I remember that.
And they brought in Tony Fritsch.
Oh yeah.
Remember Tony? Chain smoking in the locker room.
Yeah.
And then when the strike was over, I came back and I was healthy, and Tony retired. I remember him standing there in his leisure suit in front of the team and announcing that he was going to retire. And he pointed to me and said, "You got a good young man there." But Bum had after the preseason had taken me into his office and looked at me just like your dad could do and said, "Son, you're our kicker, so just figure it out. I'm not cutting you," because I was scared I was going to get cut before I even had a chance to do anything, He said, we're going to, and so in 83, of course, with that patience, with that mandate from your dad, it really allowed me like some freedom, some space to figure it out. I know we had some game winners in 83 now where we my first game win against Chicago and Atlanta and Philly. And I mean, we started figuring it out, and it sure was fun with him. And
the great thing,
the great thing
about him, one of the great things about him was he believed in people.
He was great.
And he had, and his coaches and his players, but he had a good feel for it. I mean, he would tell it, he would tell the right player the right thing, I mean, if you weren't very good, he probably wouldn't have told you that. I mean, so, but
he had really good situational awareness, I thought.
Yeah.
He that's one of his strengths. He could read people.
Yeah, he did read people really well. So,
and he'd make you feel at ease. It wasn't like him versus you. It was like a family.
Right. Yeah.
And he did so many things to make it that way. The Thursday, the grinning and picking in Vero Beach with the country music guys. I mean, flying those guys in and making them honorary coaches. And what was the deal where he would always stand in the tower? Why? Can you share the story? And then I want to get some of his great quotes, and then we'll talk about you.
Yeah,
then we'll talk about you.
Actually, he got that from Bear Bryant, Coach Bryant. He coached with Coach Bryant, and Coach Bryant always was in the tower. And the reason he was he could see the whole field, and he could look at all the drills that were going on. Because we worked separately. A lot of the time, especially offense and defense, work separately, and then certainly the kickers are in their area, so he could see every bit of practice, and so it was, if you stand at field level, you can only, it's like a football game, when you're on the sideline, you can't really see it, even see all those players running around, you can't tell exactly what's happening, but if you have the video view up high, then you can see everything a lot easier. So that was really what was behind it. And he got that from Coach Bear Bryant.
I got you.
Because Coach Bryant did that at Alabama when he coached there.
One of my favorite stories with Bum was he's up in the tower. We just started practice. We're not very far into practice. He blew the bullhorn. He had a bullhorn up there. He could, megaphone. But as I heard the story, he called practice because he had a horse running at Jefferson Downs in the first race, and he had to make the post. Is this urban legend, or is this true?
It's probably true. He did have. I know he did. I know he had a horse at Jefferson Downs, and they ran early sometimes. So,
he called. We're like, man, we're just into Skelly here.
That's right.
And the next thing, Bum's gone. So, I mean, some of the sayings, and I'm sure you've taken some with you, right, Wade? I mean,
sure.
in your illustrious coaching career, I mean, spanning 50 years, and I want to get into that shortly here, but I remember one speech: "Every man get a man, every good man get two." Yeah. You talk about straight to the point. That says everything, right?
Yeah.
And that was your dad.
Yeah, that's true. He had a knack for it. I think he had great common sense, and he could tell you something, and then everybody said, "Well, yeah, I don't know why I didn't think of that." I mean, we should do it that way. So
he would make complicated matters simple.
That's right.
And put it in layman's terms, so everybody, even the dumbest in the room could understand. I was one of them. I said, "Okay, I get that," because I barely spoke English. I was still on the. I was just a fussy foreigner, as everybody called me. So, do you have a favorite dad story that you want to share? I know there's so many.
Yeah.
But one that kind of you've kind of hit the nail on the head already about what kind of person he was, but something that resonates and you've taken with you.
Yeah, I mean, he had so many. Actually, I wrote a book, Son of Bum, that
Yes.
has a lot of those sayings in it. That if anybody wanted,
I'll go get that.
it's still available. But the funniest one was really the one with Earl Campbell. Uh, I don't know if you remember Stretch.
Of course.
Yeah.
Stretch. That was our weight. That was our weight and conditioning coach.
That's right.
We called him Stretch.
Well, he decided we would run the mile instead of running 40s, to see if everybody was in shape. Your preseason test.
Mile and a half, I think, actually.
Yeah. And so Earl was there, and Earl Campbell, we're talking about.
Oh, he's a great running back.
Yeah, there's no way he could make a mile and a half with those huge legs he had. So he tried, and then he got about a half a mile or whatever, and stepped off the track. And of course, the press, they're like they are today. I mean, they all ran to Bum. I said, Bum, what are you going to do? I said, Earl Campbell didn't make the mile and a half. Of course, Bum said in his own way, he said, "Hey, if it's a mile, we won't give it to him."
So, yeah, if it's second and a mile and a half, I'm not going to give him the ball.
Yeah, I'm not going to give him the ball. I love it.
So, it's the best. Yeah. See, that's just something where, all right, your dad would basically just say, "Hey, you guys, have some common sense here." So that was really him in a nutshell right there, man.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I love it. I didn't realize you were a ball player. I mean, you were a pretty good ball player down in Texas.
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, it's right here, black and white, man. Not making this up. You spent some time at the University of Houston with the Cougars.
Yeah.
And your dad was a defensive coordinator. What was it like? I mean, what was it like playing a defense coached by your dad?
Yeah,
I mean, that's kind of wild.
He coached me in high school, so
yeah,
he was my high school coach, and so I played for him. In fact, I played quarterback and middle linebacker in high school, and we started the first game of the year in high school, and he didn't start me at quarterback, and really, I mean, honestly, the guy I was competing with wasn't near as good, but he told me, he said, "Hey, I want everybody has to know that you're the best one, or I can't play you." I said, "Okay."
Fair.
So I started at middle linebacker, which I was more of a linebacker, but we got behind at the half, and he put me in, and we came back and won, and so I played quarterback and middle linebacker the rest of my senior year. So, but then I went to University of Houston, and then he was the defensive coordinator. So, but he was there. I was a freshman. You couldn't play as a freshman in those days, so I was on the freshman team, and he was coaching the varsity defense. And then he left after that, and actually went to the San Diego Chargers at that time. So, but he coached for a while.
Go ahead.
Yeah, he coached.
Was there one instant where you said, "Okay, I'm going from player to coach now"? Because you started coaching at a pretty young age here, and
yeah,
and why defense? Was that because Dad was defense?
Yeah, I mean, I knew defense. I played defense.
Sure.
I knew the defense because it was the same defense that I played in high school. Because my dad ran that defense, and then when he went to University of Houston, they put it in at University of Houston. And so I knew the defense, and then when I became a graduate assistant and coaching the freshman team, again, they had a freshman team. So I was the defensive coordinator of the freshman team and helped with the varsity. So that's how I started out. And then I went to coaching in high school after that. And went from there.
And you coached alongside your dad for the first time in '73 as a linebackers coach at Oklahoma State.
Right. Yeah.
And then you went on to the Oilers and the Saints from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I went. We were together at Oklahoma State. Then he went to the Oilers. I went to University of Kansas. And Actually, Oklahoma State, we were real successful, and at Kansas, we were real successful. So we had a pretty good run in college as far as we won the Fiesta Bowl at Oklahoma State, and then at Kansas, we actually beat Oklahoma. I think it may be
Pretty
the
good.
first time they beat them. We beat them 23.
Yeah.
We beat them 23-3 in Norman, and they had won 29 straight games. They were the number one team in the nation. We upset them. In fact, Von Sharman, I don't know if you remember him. He was the
Uwe von Sharman.
He kicked the 3 points for Oklahoma, or we would have shut him out. So.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What was the best part about like being alongside your dad when you guys were coaching together, and how was that dynamic?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing better. I mean, to be with your family, would be with your dad, be with your hero. He was my hero. As a coach and a son. So
yeah.
So I got to be with him and be around him, and as you know, I mean, he was such a likable person anyway, and people looked up to him.
Yeah.
I saw all those things too. So that was the neat part of it, and I learned a lot of football from him. He was he invented the numbering system on defense, the 2 technique, 3 technique, all that stuff. He invented all that stuff. When he was in high school, he took it to Texas A&M and with Coach Bryant, and Coach Bryant picked it up, took it to Alabama, and then it became. When Alabama was winning, people started using that language, I guess you'd call it, or the numbering system on defense. He started all that, so I was a part of learning all that growing up and still utilized it throughout my career.
Can I try to take our listeners inside the mind of you particularly as now put your defensive coordinator hat on, okay?
Okay.
Now when you I mean, the coordinator, as I see it, obviously, you have to delegate out to the positional coaches and have a level of trust. And then you have to make all that fit like fingers in a glove. But your philosophy specifically, Wade, always felt like, and you can riff anyway. I'll shut up here in a second. But it always seemed to me like you wanted to, number one, you wanted to stop the run, and then everything fell in place from there. What was your philosophy? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, you can't let them control the game. The first thing is to stop whatever they do best. So
right,
either the best player, the passing game, if it was, but overall philosophy, certainly you have to stop the run to force them to throw the ball, which sounds kind of crazy in pro football because they can really throw the football.
It's all they do now.
Yeah, but
almost.
But yeah, you get beat if you can't stop the run again. I mean, you're going to get beat for sure because they can control the game, and that controls the points really. So the most important thing, obviously, is the points in the game, giving up points. So, and the next most important thing is stopping them from controlling the game. Give your offense a chance to score points more often. So, and that comes with, stopping them on third down, making sure they can't run the ball, control the clock, those kind of things. Was
there a time, specific situational football now, first down, second down, third down, where you said, or was that depending on what personnel was across from you, did you you blitzed, I know that, you had great blitz packages and all that, but was there a tendency to blitz more on the early downs versus, later, or was there a system to that? Was there any method to that madness?
Well, we didn't blitz as much people think, but I mean, a 5-man rush, yeah, we did a lot of that because we taught a lot of pass rush. We worked hard on rushing the passer. Obviously, we had good pass rushers, and that obviously helps, but when you have a Ricky Jackson, you want him rushing the passer, So
correct.
we tried to utilize personnel as much as we could in that some guys, if they're good pass rushers, I mean, it sounds simple, but if they're a really good pass rusher, you don't want them dropping a whole lot as far as backers are concerned. If they're if they're real strong run player, defensive line wise, well, then you want to utilize it. You want to put them at the strong side or the left side on defense, or the right side on offense. You want to put them on the strength of the offenses. In other words, most teams are right-handed, just because most people are right-handed. So your left defensive end wants to be your good run stopper, because they're going to run more to that side, because they're going to call more strength to that side. So just things like that. Try to utilize the personnel, and then and if you got a star player, you got to let him go. You got to put him in situations where he can rush the passer, he can play the run, whatever it is, or a cornerback, if he can play man to man really well, then you let him play man. If he's not a good, we played most all zone with the Saints, so we led the NFL in pass defense there in a dome stadium, which I still think was amazing, in that we played a lot of zone defense. We played matchup zone, and those guys were really good at it. So,
well, we had the four linebackers, right? You had Vaughn Johnson, Sam Mills, Pat Swilling, and Ricky Jackson, as you mentioned.
Right.
Hard to run against them, and we had a good defensive line with Frank Warren and Jim Wilkes. Man, tough to run against, and when they pinned their ears back, it almost seemed like we won 9-3 a whole bunch of times, you know. Field position, we played that field position game. Yeah. We controlled the ball, we didn't turn it over, and we bent, but we didn't break. It almost seemed like nobody could score on us.
Yeah, well, when you have a great kicker, that's the way to play.
You see how I kind of worked that one in there?
I like that. Yeah. Speaking of great,
kicker, go ahead.
One little story. I went over to Berlin for a American football coaching clinic here a couple of months ago, and they invited me over, and it was obviously American football, but there was a guy from Norway there, and we talked about the Great Dane. He said, yeah, that's our guy. I don't know how many from Norway, but
that's all the same. The Nordic countries.
He said, of course, he's a Norwegian hero. So.
Well, I'm Danish, but if it traveled all the way to Norway, I'm happy.
I mean Danish. I'm sorry. Yeah, Great Dane. Yeah. So
the Great Dane, exactly.
Yeah. So
what kind of questions were they giving you in Berlin?
Germany has several football teams. They have an NFL league in the NFL. I'm not NFL. I'm sorry. They have a European league where they have, I think, 3 or 4 German teams. The team from Barcelona actually brought me over. For the clinic. So the Barcelona Dragons, they have a team. They have some in Italy. So they play some. It's kind of like soccer is over here. I mean, they have teams that it's not the sport. Soccer sport over there. So, they're gaining interest in it. They had the NFL Europe for a while, and I think people started knowing about it. And then, of course, we play games in London, which they sell out every year. The NFL.
And they're going to play a game in Germany as well next year.
Yeah, they are. That's right.
So that'll be great. You were head coach for several teams. You were an interim head coach. What was the hardest thing? I mean, the toughest thing had to be to replace your dad in '85. But what's the toughest thing about being an interim versus, hey, it's your job coming into the season? That seems like an impossible job to me.
It is. I think it really is. It's. I don't know anybody that's done real well. Normally, you take over the team hadn't won. That's why the coach either leaves or is fired during the season. Well, if you're an interim guy, then you just try to keep everybody together, keep them playing hard, certainly. But the motivation isn't there because normally they don't have a chance for playoffs. It's a 2 or 3 game, 3, 4 game sometime.
Yeah.
So you come in a situation where the team is not highly motivated for sure. They just lost their head coach, whether they liked him or not. So it's difficult to get the team together, and then the way you want to do things is a little bit different than what the head coach. You always followed what as assistant. You always followed what the head coach wanted overall. You could throw in some of your ideas, but it's still a tough situation because you didn't have them in training camp. You don't have the culture, the philosophy, and so forth that maybe you wanted that you would do if you started at the first of the year. So it's a tough situation. I don't know many people have ever done very well. That's for sure. We had one good game. The first one, we beat the Rams, and
yes, you did.
yeah, and in fact,
27.
Jack Del Rio picked up a fumble and ran for a touchdown in that game. So that was my first interim situation. And then, I've been interim, I guess, 3 times, and head coach 3 times.
So as a regular head coach, what was there a favorite spot that you enjoyed more than others? I know you got to be politically correct, obviously, but was there a team where you said, well, maybe you don't have to be, that's fine too. Hey, just be real. Was it Dallas? Was it Buffalo? Where was it?
Yeah, Denver was
Denver.
the first one. The Denver one was, I just wanted a head coaching job, and so there were 2 guys that were being interviewed. It was really me. I'd been there, and then Mike Shanahan had been there before, and they interviewed him. I think he turned it down. I don't know the whole deal, but all I know is I was sitting. They brought me in and said, "Wade, we want you to have the job." Put the contract right in front of me and said, "Here, you can be the head coach." So I signed it, and from being around contracts, they pretty well worked me over on that because I didn't read how much it was. In fact, I was doing a radio show and a TV show as the head coach, and so I said, what? I went into the general manager. I said, what do I get for doing this? I mean, because I'm spending a lot of time doing this. How much do I get for doing the radio and TV? And he said, "Oh, that's part of your contract." He said, "If you want that to be separate from your contract, your next contract, you can work that out." So.
Oh boy! Hey, wait, we got to read the small print, man.
Yeah, that's right. That's for sure.
Especially when it says compensation and there's a line and there's a dollar sign.
But I enjoyed all of it. I mean, I enjoy coaching.
I know.
The head coaching part. I always say, I wasn't a great head coach, but I was a pretty good defensive coordinator. Although my record isn't bad. I mean, I have a winning record as a head coach, which I don't think is all bad, especially in this league. It's tough to win. You know how tough it is to win.
You had so many players, so many great defensive players, defensive players of the year. Do you mind playing a little name game with me here to kind of wrap everything up, Wade?
Okay, that's good.
I mean, you got Oilers, you got the Saints, you got the Eagles, you got the Broncos, in the first time Broncos.
There you go.
The Bills, the Falcons, the Chargers, the Cowboys, the Texans, the Broncos second time, and the Rams.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna pick a couple from each.
Okay.
Because I got a list of 50 guys here, and we can't. Just not enough time in the universe to do it. We talked a lot about the Saints. Obviously, some of those guys. The guy we really haven't mentioned was the late, great Kenny Stapler, the Snake. I had an opportunity to sit next to him in my locker room in the Saints. What a great guy, man. Oh, what a gamer. That's the only thing I can – he was so cool. He was so calm. I don't even – I mean, people that don't know Kenny Stabler, please go look. at film of this great quarterback, this great competitor. What's your give me your thoughts on the late great Snake, Kenny Stabler?
Yeah, just like you said, I mean, he could see everything. You know, he was a quarterback. He could see. He's the only quarterback that I've ever been around, and you'd see it in practice every once in a while. But he's the only quarterback that I've ever been around that the defensive back would fall down or something on one side of the field, and he would throw it over there. He knew it right now. You know, I mean, I just never seen anybody do that. The first day we had him with the Oilers in training camp, he came in. Of course, he didn't know any of the players. He didn't pick up a playbook, so
no,
I don't know.
No.
You know, so the first practice we had Skelly 7-on-7. Skelly, he completed every pass, and you know we got him and we said, okay, Ken Stay. I've heard a lot about him. You know, and like you say, he was so cool. And then he came out, and we had a really good defense. I mean, we won a lot of games with the Oilers and had a really great defense. And guys that could cover. He hit every pass. It was that's when I knew he was amazing. I'd hadn't seen anybody hit every pass in the Skelly, no matter what. It's hard to hit him on air, you know, with nobody out there. Every one of them, but he could do it.
My Kenny Stabler story quickly, and we will move on. We're in Atlanta. We're playing. Kenny Duckett had returned a kickoff. We're down by 2 points. It was one of my first game-winning field goals. I think it was 1983. Kenny is conducting his 2-minute drill, and it's beautiful. And he's just matriculating down the field. And I know what's coming. Obviously, we need 3 points to win the game. And I had this we called timeout with 2 seconds to go, 3 seconds to go, and it was a 35-yarder from the left hash. And I'm coming on the field, and I'm literally petrified. I was one of the few times when I was really, honestly, very, very frightened of the moment. You know, and Kenny, cool, he's standing with his arm up on the ref, and he's just watching the clock. And as I'm coming out there, my heart rate's racing. Time out. And he goes he waves me over to him. He grabs me, puts his arm around my shoulder. He goes, Morten, let's go home. I was like, what? Completely disarmed me. Let's go home.
Yeah.
That's what he said to me. So what he said without saying it was, hey, man, you're going to make this kick and we're going to go home.
Yeah.
And that completely settled me down. We kicked the field goal and we went home.
Yeah.
That was Kenny, you know? I don't know if you ever heard that story.
No, I haven't heard that story, but that's completely
unbelievable. Yeah, it's just unbelievable. With the Eagles, the great Reggie White. Talk to me about Reggie White, just briefly. Some things.
Yeah, Reggie obviously was a great player. He was a fun guy to be around. He could imitate everybody. He could imitate Buddy Ryan. He imitated me. He would be in the rookie show every year. Every year he would do his, Muhammad Ali and.
I remember him doing that.
Yeah, he was a fun guy.
He's the greatest. Yeah. Fly like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
You know, he could.
I'm the greatest.
Obviously, he could do everything.
And,
football wise, I mean, he was really fast. Not only big but fast, and so he generated so much power. I don't think we've seen anybody with that much power. Aaron Donald comes closer to it right now than anybody, but he was so much bigger than Aaron Donald.
Is that a guy when you look at Reggie White, you look at an Aaron Donald, and as a defensive coordinator, do you say, okay, I can build a defense around this person? There's not many in the history of the game you can say that about or do that with. Is that accurate, Wade? Is that okay? Oh, yeah. This guy is going to be like the stem, and then everything else will fit around him.
Yeah, and we were playing a 4-3 with Buddy Ryan, and he was playing defensive. Reggie was playing defensive tackle, and so they double teamed him all the time with the center and the guard for football people. So we moved him down to defensive end, where he's basically one-on-one with the tackle all the time. And, that was the rest of the story is nobody could stop him, even if they had two guys. But he really flourished outside of defensive end because he was over 300 pounds, but he could really run. And everybody's seen the hump move that he had, but it was because he had so much speed and size and strength.
Hump move. What's the hump move?
That was the one he knocked the guy down.
Head slap?
No, it wasn't head slap. If you watch anything on Reggie White, you'll see him
check that
hit
out.
the guy and knock the tackle down, going inside of him. That's the hump move. He's known for that. He was great at it. So,
I'm glad I didn't experience Reggie White's.
And great power.
Glad I didn't experience Reggie White's hump move. Let me tell you that. Hey, John Elway in Denver, one of the greatest.
Been the bump move with you.
Bump move. I like that. Hey, in Denver, John Elway, where does he rank as in the greatest quarterbacks?
Elway was cool too. I mean, he nothing really bothered him either. I think that you have to have that to be a really great quarterback. I think you have to have that demeanor about you, calmness about you. Because he called timeout one game. At the end of the game, the crowd was going crazy, and I said, John, why do you call timeout? I mean, we got to score here. And he said, I just want to get more of the crowd into it, What? And then he went out on the next play. We were on the 3-yard line, threw a touchdown pass, and we won the game. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
The great Marv Levy. Marv and Dick Vermeil were some of the first special teams coaches in the history of the game in the league. They came off the West Coast, and then of course Marv became the head coach in Buffalo, and you worked with him. Talk to me about Marv Levy. What a great man.
Great man, yes, and really a really good leader. I mean, he communicated with the players really well. I thought the things he talked about with the players, he wasn't an X's and O's guy, an offensive guy, defensive guy. Yeah, special teams, yes, was the area that his strength, but he had a great way of getting them ready to play. And I'll say this for him: what most teams are doing now is he didn't really get them in preseason. He didn't play as good players. They were healthy when the season started. And for a long time, people got people hurt in preseason. It seemed like they're getting away from it, but that was more of Marv Levy. He didn't get them hurt. He had once we got to the start of the season, preseason, they weren't going to play until the regular season. And obviously, he had a lot of wins. It was great, but a great communicator to the players.
Yeah. You were in Atlanta for a short time, and you were part of that Michael Vick era there. Talk to me. I had Vick on the show a couple of weeks ago. I had a really, really good conversation with Michael about the good, the bad, and the ugly, if you will. Yeah. But talk to me about your impression and your thoughts on Michael Vick.
Yeah, I mean, he was obviously unique, but I mean, he was, Lamar Jackson. Now we see him running with a football, but there was nobody better running with a football than Michael Vick. I mean, he ran out of the stadium at Minnesota. Yeah, I mean, and as a defensive coach, I'd be on the sideline, and we'd be on the sideline. When he dropped back to pass, we'd all start hollering, "Run, run!"
Oh man, how do you defend against him? How do you defend against a player like that?
Such a talent running with the football. He could have been a great running back. So, it was fun to play with him. And my second year there, he got hurt. So,
who's the best pass rusher that you've coached? Is it Von Miller?
Wow. Well, I mean, Reggie White obviously was.
Yeah.
Yeah. We played strike here in '87 now, and we only played 12 games, and Reggie White had 21 sacks. So
yes.
you know, DeMarcus Ware, who I think is going in the Hall of Fame with a great rusher, along with Von Miller. Luckily we had both those guys help win us the Super Bowl.
Yes.
T.J. Watt, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, is a pretty good player. I got to coach him. We got Elwin Bethea and Curly Culp are in the Hall of Fame. When I started out with the Oilers and Robert Brazil, all three of those guys on defense were in the Hall of Fame. They were all great
Yes.
rushers and great players. So it's hard to pick out one because they're in different eras. And then, and Aaron Donald, I coached him with the Rams. So, and, we can't leave out Ricky Jackson. What a player he was.
No, city champ.
Yeah, champ. That's right. Yeah.
City champ for Pahokee, Florida.
That's right. Yeah, he's
special.
Yeah, he was, and he was a fun guy to be around. That's for sure.
But he was fun. Yeah, he was a tough guy. Remember, he had a car accident and played with a shield the week later.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, broken jaw.
Yeah, that's right.
But he was great, and Pat was great. Swilling, I'm talking about, because Vaughn and Sam were so great in the middle. Yeah. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Gave him that low. Hey, your second go around with the Broncos, you had the Hall of Famer Peyton Manning. Was that like having another? Your thoughts on Peyton? Was that like having another coach on the field? Wasn't it?
Yeah, he was such a great leader. He influenced defensive players, not just offensive players. So.
How so?
Just his mannerisms and talking with his communication with the players, and he would tell them little things every once in a while and say, hey, you're giving away this, you see in practice and things like that. So, I mean, he was always just amazing. Coach-like things, yeah, you bet. He would not only the offensive guys, but he would help the defensive guys too. And when he was when he was hurt, he was hurt during the season we won the Super Bowl. He was out 7 games, and so when he started coming back, he started playing on the practice squad. Well, he would change the protection. People that know football a little bit, we'd have stuff in practice that you practice against the other team, so you can beat their protections, pass rush stuff. Well, he would change the protections. we would stop it in practice. We'd have to say, Peyton, they're not going to do that. We just keep it how it is, so we can practice it correctly. But he was always competing.
That's funny. He wanted that practice squad to be.
That's right. He wanted
starting defense.
Yeah,
that's hilarious. Is Sean McVay with the Rams? Is he one of the best coaches in the game today?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's besides my son Wes, he's
of course. How could I remember? How could I be so foolish?
He's really sharp. Got a lot of common sense, but a real smart guy. I think he's got a photographic memory. I think if you look up on stuff on him, he can tell you what play he called in high school, in the third quarter against, one of the teams. I mean, he can remember everything. So, but he's able to utilize it. I've seen a lot of smart people that don't have a lot of common sense, but he's got a good feel for personnel, players, and leadership, culture, all those things. He does a great job.
Wade, I have nothing else for you right now, man. I just want to say, number one, Merry Christmas. Number two, I love you dearly and your family, and your dad was a huge influence in my life. Obviously, he gave me my first job, and thank you. It sounds like you were a big part of that too, so I appreciate that. Although, isn't it funny to think my first year contract was $40,000? They're now making $5 million.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
A couple of zeros added as we move along.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, man, so many lessons learned from me, man, and so many great people and memories I have. And one of the last contacts I had with your dad was when he congratulated me on a video when I made the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And when I retired, and I have that video. I treasure it. I cherish it, as I do you and our relationships. We don't talk a lot, but I just feel like I feel a special connection to you and your family and Debbie and everybody in the Phillips family. So wish you all the best. And I really do appreciate you spending some time with me today, buddy, on Great Dane Nation.
Yeah, that's the great thing about friendships. You know, we're not in contact with each other all the time, but it's always there. Those feelings are always there.
It doesn't go anywhere, does it?
That's right. Love you, man.
It's like, I love you too, man.